Never be heard. I could write and write without a single word. Thank you a song. Would you even hear if I said I was wrong? Would you shed a tear? There's a road no one ever knows where it goes. There's a road no one ever knows. There's a road no one ever knows where it goes. There's a road no one ever knows. There's a road no one ever knows where it goes. There's a road no one ever knows. No one ever knows where it goes. There's a road no one ever knows. There's a road no one ever knows where it goes. There's a road no one ever knows.
The second album, we started off hard and heavy. The first 4 songs were kind of, Murderer's Row, so to speak. And so Hourglass, the great intro, and it was a heavy song. And then Mirror, maybe the best one on there, that was heavy, just rocked hard. So the second CD really came roaring out of the gates, unlike the first CD. The second CD, we kicked off with Hourglass. And so not only was that a big, hard-hitting, fast-paced rocker, but it had that great intro. And so that awesome intro with Joe on the wah pedal, that kicks off the whole thing and sets the tone for the album. Now, by contrast, with the first CD, we started off with Amanda, a slow love ballad, and that was a mistake. Because what we should have done was we should have kicked off with Railway Blues. And then, maybe the next song or several songs in, you go with Amanda. But, we didn't know any better because that was everybody's favorite song, and Railway Blues was popular too, but Amanda was the big hit, so to speak, and so that's what we kicked off with. But we got it right this time on the second CD. We came in roaring with Hourglass.
Some of my favorite songs on Imaginary Joe is ones that Matt came up with these amazing bass lines on. Songs like Hourglass, it was actually his. I felt like his bass line really made that song and helped me come up with the guitar part.
I remember being locked in that little room playing drums, and I had my acoustic snare. I want to say I had that Mapex kit, the snare to that Mapex kit. But yeah.
When we were doing this, when we did our second CD, we went out and purchased a Boss home studio recorder, which is not anything to write home about, but it was great for demo purposes and what we needed to use it for at the time, instead of going into a studio again, doing it at our own pace and how we wanted to do it at the time. And we had this house that we were practicing in. It's kind of a dump, really, and in the back room we set up and did our recordings. And drum set back there, guitars were isolated really well in closets, and just whatever you could do to try to get a good sound. And the whole album is much heavier than the first one musically. And at that time, I think grunge was pretty big, and I don't know if I would say the songs were more alternative or grunge, but they were definitely much heavier than our first album, and something I guess you could put in that category.
And so the next album, that second album, really had that push, harder rock, and Philip. I mean, he was coming up with some good hard rock too. So we really went away from the really melodic love ballad sound of the first album.
So I think Imaginary Joe, once we started recording it, some of the things that really stood out is Matt's songwriting had really improved, and his bass playing had really improved.
Hourglass. Great song, everybody loved it. Joe kicks it off with that awesome Clapton Hendrix style wah intro. The song was based on Matt's bass. It was built on that. Matt's bass riff and the chords. I mean, it was great. Flat keys and interesting intervals and great beat. Rocker. I mean, it was driving, it rocked out. And then Joe, just the icing on the cake with that. I mean, really made it with that intro.
All right, let's see if you can spot this one.
Hourglass. Joe's really, I mean, just kills it on the solos. He's got 2 solos and everything like that, but there's a middle part where it stops, you know, you got kind of just the basses going and stuff, and Philip comes in with that middle part with the lead guitar work there, so that's how we were. He added some really cool stuff to that. But you know, you got your main guitar player, he's killing it on leads, but the other guy puts in one in the middle, and we did that. There was a lot of songs that we did that way. Joe was playing maybe the main part, but Philip adds a solo too, so we were really unique like that.
Hourglass. Gosh, I can't even remember how did it go? You're gonna have to.
Joe came in with the wall.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
And then Matt's bass did the same thing. And then you went.
Yeah, that was the same thing. That was I had to come in with something. Y'all came in with something big. I had to come in with something big.
Hourglass. I wrote that on bass and wrote it to sing lead with, and so it's not super complicated, but I've got some licks. I have a few different licks that I throw in there to keep it interesting, and so Joe plays the intro, you know, he's killing it on that wall intro, and so I do a high note intro on bass to start off with before going to more like the root notes, but it was like
I remember him coming to my house and us going in the sunroom, which was a bigger room than my room. And I remember him showing me the bass line and talking about the lyrics and talking about what the song was about. And I thought it had a great meaning. And I remember coming up with the intro, which originally wasn't with a wah pedal, but at some point started using a wah pedal on it, and it just fit the song perfectly, I think, and it was a cool effect for the song. And Matt's bass playing was really good, that carried the song in a lot of ways, in the chord progression, and it was a really nice bass line that he come up with. And Jason's playing all through Imaginary Joe, and the whole album really showed off his drum skills.
So I came in with the roll on the snare drum into the toms, and then dun 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 dun, and then how the hitches on the song, I just used a lot of crash, and it worked out really well. But that was fun.
That song didn't really need me.
Once again, Philip doing a great job on a lot of the other tracks, and that one too, at coming up with a part that could kind of go along with what I was playing and still be interesting.
Hourglass, I didn't have a whole lot to contribute to that. I mean, that was mostly Matt and then Jason and Joe. I mean, Jason's drums were great. They fit perfectly, full of energy, and they came in big, just like the Wall intro. And Joe's big solos, so you got big lead guitar, big drums, fits what Matt did with his really creative bass and just writing the song. So I didn't have any harmonies or any special parts like that. So when it came to the breakdown, that's when I kind of jumped at the opportunity, and that was to do, a little riff. And we played that live, and I would just slip it in there, and he didn't shoot it down or anything, so I kept it in there. Then I laid it down on the BR8. And so on the chorus, I did about like a different run for between each chorus line. And so it was sort of something like, I want you to know who I am. But when we played it live, it was more like this. Probably like that. Well, when you go to record, then you start fretting about details, and you go, that's too basic. That's just a basic pentatonic quick little run, and it sounded like, what I put in the Winds of Change. Those riffs were a lot like that. So I was like, okay, gotta think here, gotta get outside the box a little bit and shake it up. And so I was like, okay, I'll reverse it a little bit and make a little slide. And so it turned into so that was, not a huge difference, but enough of a difference to change it a little bit, make it different, and mainly to make myself feel better that I wouldn't put in something too amateur down on that great song. There was the one break where everything stops. It just octaves.
And then on the one part where, okay, it would slow down, we needed a drum part in there, so then I came up with the snare drum part, thought it'd sound good. And that was just trying to figure out what sounded good on the snare, because we knew what we wanted on there, so I had to play this. I just ended up coming up with the snare.
Didn't you unsnap the snare? Like, there's a thing you can do on a snare drum to have it tight, or you can turn.
No,
it seems like you let it, and
I think I let the snare on. I
left the snare on.
guess I think that's how it went. Yep. Something like that. I can't remember.
But it goes in with the bass because it's just bass and a hi-hat kind of, you know, or no, he goes to snare, almost a march style snare, but low key, and everything's low key, and it's just the bass doing great sound. But it was like, well, I need something to slip that in there. So that's my one little contribution. Also, what was tricky on the BR8 was coming back in after that, because that breakdown, then a build up, and then back to the song, verses and chorus and solo out. And it was tricky to get that, you know, for 20-year-old kids recording themselves, producing themselves for the first time. It was a challenge, and trying to get it timed out, mapped out, and pieced together. And then it goes into that, you know, E chord build up. Joe's wah pedal lead, like the same as the intro, and then cue the bass, and then cue the big drums. So everybody seemed, the people that would show up, a little crowd following, whatever you want to call it, they all seemed to like it a lot. We loved it. So this is a great song and a great way to kick off the second CD for sure.
Mirror, one of Philip's songs. To this day, I'm still pretty pleased with what I played on it. It's probably my favorite recording that I've ever done.
And then Mirror really was awesome. Just to me, I thought that was maybe even the best one on the whole album, but that was more of a surprise. It was kind of reversed for Desert Rose and Mirror. Mirror kind of snuck up on everybody. That wasn't supposed to necessarily be one of the big hitters, but it wound up that way. In production, we really just, I mean, that it came together like that. We all just were digging it, and we put in our parts and rocked it out. When I wrote Mirror, I was partially under the pressure of competing with Matt, because he's coming out with, you know, this great new stuff, and the feeling of wanting to go a different direction. And so I just started playing around with tunings, and you know, I had an acoustic guitar. I forget exactly, not this one, but maybe my Fender acoustic. And so I dropped it, and you know, we had started hearing a little bit about drop D tuning, and here's a good place to cut.
The bass line at the beginning, just acoustic guitar and bass. Once again, he could have easily just played root notes, single note stuff, but really came up with a brilliant hook that really made that intro. And then Jason's drumming, you know, and the chorus, once again, just completely outstanding and unique. I was pretty lucky to get to play with these guys that came up with these cool parts. They made it really, I guess it put maybe pressure on me to come up with better parts, but at the time, I didn't feel that way. I think looking back on it now, I can kind of see just how incredible some of these songs turned out.
So Mirror was the other song we did panning. We would pan left to right on the drums to make it roll across the sound. And there was like three, it was almost like you did three parts in one song. So
I'm trying to remember.
You know, the chorus was the heavy metal. It was like,
Leave
leave
me
me alone. And you
yeah,
were just going,
oh, yeah,
it was
okay,
metal
okay,
drumming.
okay.
I mean, you were doing metal.
Back, you know, I gotta try to jog my memory because I was playing because we wanted a march style beat
Then
too.
you came out of that into this really cool, like, rock, like from metal drumming to hard or to just rock drumming, but you did it in an unorthodox time.
Yeah.
Because I switched my chords and you stayed in the metal for an extra measure, then just to the rock drumming.
Yeah.
And so
well, I was waiting for you to be done talking, but that was cool because it was like we couldn't figure out what we wanted on that part, and I think you wanted a march style beat or something like was heavy snare because you were all about deep sounding snare and stuff. So I ended up trying to figure out how to transition from that back to the part where I go into the straight beat, and I had to actually go a measure or two after the fact when it changed, and then come back in with the drum part. It was tricky. It took a few takes to do it. I remember.
Jason's drumming, he was just drummed like an animal. I mean, he just went nuts. And heavy metal drumming, and then that's in the main chorus. It's metal drumming, and then he shifts gears down from the metal drumming to rock drumming. And then during the verses, I don't know what style you would even call that, but it's just some sort of alternative drumming because I've got that weird chorus, just sort of a rhythmic thing, and the melodies, it's very alternative, and he just kind of just dives into this rhythmic thing, and so he's got multiple gears. And without Jason's drumming, Mirror's just not the same. Matt's bass part, totally innovative and creative, and without that bass, it's not the same. I mean, you can't even think of Mirror without Matt's bass. And he drops the bottom out, drop tuning down to, a whole step down, and just and the breaks in the song where it kind of breaks down, and I do the on the acoustic. That deal, those guys didn't let that stand. It could have. I mean, you break down, it's just that part, and that's all I had envisioned. And instead, Joe comes in with these just volume swells, just super creative. And Matt is playing way up the neck on the small strings, and just and just putting their parts down. Those guys really just expounded on it and elevated the song, took it in a higher place. And Joe's leads, I mean, he's got that slow gear effect, raunchy, we were blown away. It's almost like it just evolved from the recording. It really, I don't know that it was expected to be.
That was a studio creation, and that turned into a monster thanks to the other guys.
And it might well be the best song on the album, in my opinion, but it really evolved from the recording. And you've got the acoustic. Philip puts down he's got a down-tuned acoustic, and just nice, heavy, cool acoustic guitar sound there, and I'm excited. I'm drop D and the bass, and I'm liking what I'm doing. That was one of our strengths, I think, was the original music. That was what we were best at, and so we loved that. And really, our magic was how well we meshed together creatively with our own stuff. And so we were all just, every one of us. I mean, you had one of you had a song, and the other guys, the way they would come up with their parts was just really, really good. Cool thing. Jason, I mean, Mirror, so he's getting into it, and he comes up with some really cool drum sounds on that. Then, like I said, my bass, you feed off of each other. So that song, I was really digging that song so well that I feel like, want to brag like, oh, my part was great, but I really like the bass I came up with for Mirror because it was the juices of it, you know. He wrote the song, the stuff was cool as him, but it's just like, I'm tuned in, you know, you're in the zone with what he's doing, and so it's like, oh, I got this drop D, boom, you know, I got these cool runs for it, so that's what we did. I hadn't been playing long, I wasn't technically all that great, I played by ear, so there's a lot I didn't know, but I could do that, you know, it's like, bro's got a song here, and I'm gonna put something down, and, Joe, of course, that way. Jason, we all fed off of each other. Some of the stuff that I did, Philip would, same way, channel into that and come up with cool stuff. So that was one of the best things about our group.
And then, like, the slow gears, like, I mean, Joe, we're used to Chet Atkins, clean stuff, and, I mean, he could do anything he wanted, and he was into Jimmy Page, Zeppelin, and he could play. And sometimes he would get dirty and loud, but a lot of times he was Mr. Nice Guy, clean, and suddenly this slow gear and some of the stuff he was putting on Mirror just blew us away. I can't imagine that song without Joe's leads. So all three of the other guys, they made the song. You know, I down-tuned it, and it was just a unique sound. In my mind, it was sort of an acoustic song. It was just sort of a mild mellow with a creative melody, and it was a different take. It was a different angle because the drop tuning and that kind of the rhythm, I don't know what you would call it, but it was sort of a sweeping rhythm, just a groove to it that I hadn't really done before. And so I had that, but I couldn't, I'm not sitting there in the living room at the apartment, the downstairs apartment at Highland Oaks, was where I wrote it, and I'm not sitting there thinking of what it turned out, the monster that it turned into. But I did want a heavy chorus. And so when I got to the chorus, if you'll leave me alone just the way, I started banging on my guitar. So that's when I presented it to them, Matt being the first one to hear that. I'm, just, sweeping groove. Da, 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 da. And then I get to the, so they could tell that's like, oh, he wants to rock out on the chorus. But aside from that, I mean, I couldn't have envisioned what they cooked up. Hats off to them.
And we had to I think there was a couple of times when we recorded it, I think that the snare drum wasn't mic'd right, or we couldn't get the sound we wanted. And then finally we got it. And that was the most frustrating thing about when we recorded stuff like that with a heavy snare, was the fact that the snare drum was it was either too loud or it didn't sound good or whatever. But you would do the whole track and then you had to play it back. And I remember I got frustrated, especially with that one, because I think we had to redo the drum track several times because of sound. So it was fun, man. That was one of my favorites too.
And of course the title, it's pretty self-explanatory. The song, it sounds like an attack on somebody else or various other people, but the title sort of lends itself to, I sort of got that from a John Lennon thing when he was asked about How Do You Sleep, the nasty song that he came up with just attacking Paul, and then several years later he kind of regretted it. And in an interview he was asked about that, and he was like, really, when I write those things, I find out it's really about myself. And it's kind of a cop-out, but I had that in mind and thought, there's an element of truth to that when you're sort of, pissed off at somebody or you're disappointed with somebody and you're writing about them. There's an element of that disappointment reflecting back on yourself. And so I was like, Mirror, that's the title. And the word reflection's in there too, but it's you kind of reflect. Your disappointment causes you sometimes to reflect on yourself and why you're putting up with something or expecting something from somebody or believing in somebody. So, and the chorus, I never really was satisfied with those lyrics. Those were sort of placeholder lyrics. I don't know if I've ever said that to anybody, but the leave me alone, just stay away, I don't want to see your face for even one more day. I was never happy with that, but they loved it. Those were placeholders for me until I could find better. But they were just like, no, yeah, that's, you know, and so it stuck, unfortunately.
The song Mirror is probably my favorite song on our second CD, guitar-wise. I had a lot of complicated effects that are hard to duplicate in a live setting, with volume swells and different tunings, the baritone sounding solos, the different delays, just the reverse sounding effects that were going on. The first solo, I probably can't play it like I did 20 years ago. One of those things you do it once and you just probably can't do it again, but I can kind of give you an idea of where I was playing and some of the sounds and tones I was getting.
Jason, he tore it up on the drums, and we panned. Maybe shouldn't have done this, but we were having fun with it, and we panned the drums, and you could roll it, pan thing and roll it left to right stereo. And so most speakers over the years even, you can hear it roll, and the drums will start and end up over here and go back and stuff. And he's just got he tears it up on the chorus especially, and then even in those little bridges, So
the second solo on the song Mirror had a pretty rude sound to it, and I was playing something like this.
That song, part of what makes it so good is that it just was a different sound, and it had different sounds within, the premise, which was different. And so we put that thing number 2 right behind Hourglass, and that's about fitting, because you might say Hourglass is the best song, and then Mirror could be the second best, but that's, not to forget about Down. Down could have been the first or second best. Any one of those 3 could kind of, almost go in any order there.
The chorus on Mirror was pretty aggressive. Something like this. Dr. Feedback.
So you'd have to say this, it's a pretty interesting property. It's, I'd call it the Stonehenge of Wichita Falls. Look how much it's been overgrown. Steps to the basement, flooded. This is the backyard. This would have been some kind of, this is a big impressive patio. This house was built in 1939. George Keith, co-founder Benny Keith. So 1939 they built this. This would have been a big old impressive. Well, it still is, but they must have had some kind of huge concrete back patio. And what a house this must have been. There's some kind of shed or something right by the back of the house, and then a bigger shed here. I've seen this before when it was standing. It was almost completely intact. At least 20 years ago when I saw it. The silo was intact. You can see that the roof there is collapsed on the silo. It's wild. But that shed has not aged well at all. That was fully intact last time I saw it, about 20 years ago.
So with Mirror, I was starting to, that's where we kind of learned about Dadgad, was Jacob McReynolds and Satan Boy Cody. They, so much of Zeppelin is in Dadgad tuning, where you have D, A, D, G, A, D, hence the Dadgad. It's Dadgad.
It's called, they call it Dadgad, okay.
Mixed in with that was sort of experimenting with drop D. You just drop the top string down to D and play everything. And a lot of that was becoming popular late 90s and, drop D type stuff. And so I thought, well, I thought, why not do something a little different? So when you do that, you drop it down to D, tune it relatively to itself, and that takes all the strings down a whole step. And so I kind of like that deeper sound. It's new, it's not dadgad, it's not drop D, and so I just sort of came up with and like, ooh, hey, pleased with the outcome of that really deep and rich sound.
I remember going over and doing a lot of my recording during the mornings or day when some of the other guys were at work. That might actually be where the name Imaginary Joe came from, because I would end up going over and putting down a track, and they would come over later and listen to it, and maybe there might be people around, because there were always people that came out and watched us play and practice and everything, constantly hanging out with us, that heard these songs and said, hey, who's playing on that or whatever, and then that came up with, oh, it's Imaginary. And anyway, that's what they told me anyway, that's why they named it that. I don't know, but anyway, it's still to this day, I don't think I've played on anything that I've been that creative with volume swells and different tunings and whatnot. But it's still one of my favorite songs that I've ever played on and recorded. And I've played on a lot of songs and done a lot of recordings. So it speaks volumes of Philip's writing in that song.
And in those days, he was sort of fading, and we didn't see him as much. And he would kind of come in during the day after lessons, and we kind of taught him how to use the BR8, and he got acclimated pretty quick. So then he would just let himself in during the day, and we're off doing something else. And he'd get in there, and he started putting his parts down on the BR8 to mirror. And then we come in that night after he had gone, and I'd go, oh, there's another track on the BR8. Track 4 is lit up. Joe must have been here. Put the headphones on, listen. Just blown away. Oh, here, listen to this. You hand them to the other guy.
And then the verses, when you were drumming to the verses.
Yeah, the verses were
really
just like,
unique.
Yeah, it was really just like, I was basically listening to Fuel in those days, and I was trying to do like these different kind of like ghost notes and stuff. Yeah.
Dun, 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 all you ever, and then you were on the hi-hat.
Yeah, the hi.
And then you did a roll into the beat.
Yeah, I did rolls into the beats to set up for the next style I was going to play. Like, so I do rolls, or I do hi-hat clicks, and then come in, and it made it easier for me because it was a good transition into each part. So that was really cool. I was really creative back in those days. So much now, it's really just the stuff we play now is really cookie cutter, not really creative because you're playing somebody else's music.
Born That Way, really an awesome song that Philip wrote. Love the message and the meaning behind it, the guitar parts, the riffs. Super cool song. We didn't really play it that much that I can remember, but really something that stood out and should have been played more. One of my favorites.
The third song on our album, the second album, Born That Way, that was another kind of rocker. That was a cool, had a great hook and melody and chords.
Say I don't want to work to collect my pay. Blame it on society, don't give me responsibility. It's just my generation, everybody's crying about discrimination. Born that way now, baby, we were born that way. Born that way now, maybe we were born that way. It's a great excuse.
The song that I loved on Imaginary Joe was called Born That Way, and it's one of Philip's songs, and I just love the meaning and the message, and I think even after all these years, the song was written in the early 2000s, the meaning and the message is still the same today. So Philip had this little intro he was doing on guitar using some suspended chords. It sounded something like this.
Baby, she was born that way. Born that way now. Maybe she was born that way. It's a great excuse.
Phrase that I tried to play on Born That Way, just a riff that's redundant throughout the song. And I'd kind of play it in two positions, and a lot of times I would just improvise on some of the notes, but it sounded something like this. And then sometimes I'd play it higher up the neck.
So then it rolled into Born That Way.
Great hi-hat move by Jason. That little deal was interesting because I don't know what that is or what I was thinking, but the little pinky note on a bar chord, power chord, but it has that little, it works because you got, but really it's like, what is that? I mean, I've never seen that done, and I've never, but you got the power chord notes right there and then throw in that little, but I like it. but Jason has this excellent hi-hat, perfect timing. It almost sounds like a reverse cymbal. Then for the very ending, we throw in a B flat. Nice little... I used to kind of think, oh, that's the only B flat in there, but no, it's the opening chord is a B. I guess B flat sus, if there is such a thing. But just a power chord B flat to end it. And
a lot of that stuff, man, I just played it. I just thought it sounded good and played it. It wasn't like I strategically come in there and played parts. I just thought it sounded good. Yeah, it wasn't improv. It was improv. That's all it was. And if it sounded good, then I'd use it. If not, then I wouldn't. But yeah, it was mostly just improv. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, I think I want to do this, and this on a lot of it. I mean, some of it was like that, very few, but most of that stuff was just me playing something, you know, what I thought sounded good.
Born That Way, very political song, and I was a little self-conscious of it, the heaviness of the political message and everything, and the chorus was the hook, obviously. That's the hook, that's the riff, and that's built around suspended chords, like I said. You know, we were getting into that. And then Born That Way, that's sort of like, that says most of what you need to say. But then you gotta have these verses, and they're very politically charged, controversy. They wouldn't fly today, not even close. I mean, that song would get us canceled like that. It's a good thing we're not even on the radar to get canceled. But anyway, those lyrics, because of that, I was a little bit nervous about that, and then I decided to use the bullhorn effect on the BR8, which there was a lot of effects, be it vocal effects or guitar effects and things on the BR8. It was like a little computer, and it had tons of things like that, lots of different beats, hundreds of beats, I think, beat styles and patterns. And so you get to playing around and you find these effects that you think are cool. It's like a kid in a candy store. Well, one of those effects was bullhorn. And, you know, the bullhorn effect makes it, you know, distorts it like this. This is kind of what you're going to hear. And I was like, okay, mainly it sounds cool, so I want to try that. But also, as icing on the cake, it sort of obscures the controversial verses. And I remember John Belcher saying, yeah, but you can't really tell what you're saying. And I was like, good. You know, and not to the point that you couldn't tell at all, but you'd really have to study, meaning it would have to be somebody who was really interested in finding out what the lyrics were saying or what the meaning was. So that's Born That Way.
I remember there was a couple of breaks where the drums would kick back in after just a quick pause, and one of the cool parts there is the second stop where the drums come back. There's an extra hit. I don't know if that was a bass drum hit maybe, but it's and it comes back in. We thought, yeah, leave that. That sounds cool.
Double hit drum, bass drum, kick drum, double hit at the very end was sort of an accident of engineering, and it was at the very end. At the outro solo, we left it in. It sounds pretty cool. And then, you know, Born That Way, of course, is a anti-PC sort of song that would piss a lot of people off today. But it's basically, it's excuses. And I was, even back then, 20 years ago, I was sick of excuses and, you know, people, just the grievance attitude, and even before the grievance industry, but just making excuses for everything, trying to get special treatment, or trying to get, you know, handouts, trying to get, you know, excuse away their lifestyle or their choices or their behaviors because, hey, I'm born that way, you know, I can't help it, you need to, and man, have things really worsened. But even back then, it was just sort of, you know, whatever people wanted to do, they would make an excuse that, hey, I'm born that way, so you've got to back off and leave me alone, rather than just accepting their own you know, responsibility, taking responsibility, and I was just fed up with it, so it's sort of a political song in a veiled way. And then on the verses, I used the bullhorn effect, which I loved, and also that sort of sounds like a Strokes style vocal, but the Strokes hadn't really come out yet, and we liked it. And then the other thing was, I liked the sound of the bullhorn, but I also wanted to use it to kind of mask and obscure the lyrics. Because the lyrics, I was a little self-conscious of those verses. I mean, the chorus is clear. We just used the Vox doubler for the chorus, and, you know, just the regular vocals mostly. That the verses have the bullhorn, it's sort of obscured. Because I was self-conscious, not just a little bit of the meaning, but they weren't that tight. They had a point to make, and it was okay, but it wasn't the most eloquent, tightly written, even with the rhymes and some of the choices of words, subjects, names. But it worked, and it was mainly just a good excuse to have a driving rocker, and really, it, aside from the message of Born That Way, kind of sarcastic message of Born That Way, is all about the beginning hook.
But that was cool. That was a lot of fun doing that one, and I remember Jason's drumming was really unique and cool. Joe's guitar, great guitar work on that.
And then Down. Down by far was the most influential, besides Amanda, was the most turning point song, I guess you would say. That it was magical.
That's what I like. The harder rock, the heavier stuff, and so I could really kind of push that with Down and Hourglass and some songs like that. And Down was really kind of funny because it didn't really have anybody in mind in particular with that, with the the message or the lyrics, and more of an overall feel just kind of developed from the practice feel. By then we had moved from the tax office to the band house was in Dogpatch, but it was on 38th Street, a few streets away from the tax office. But anyway, so we had moved there, and just from then, and you just experienced the in and out, the people and whatnot. So who do you think you are? Why do you hang around? That kind of thing just kind of developed from that. But the main thing was, it was just kind of a, just kind of a yell and hard rock, just something exciting to perform, to get people excited. And it was really a kind of a crowd pleaser for the crowd we had. We'd get sometimes 20, 30 people, and just on a practice night, so that doesn't sound like much, but it was really kind of a big deal.
All right. All right, so that's a song called Down, one of Matt's songs, the nasty one. Kind of like this song and Desert Rose and Hourglass, maybe even another one on our second album. I kind of felt like it just didn't have the energy on my part, at least, that we kind of had when the four of us were playing and jamming, because we played this a lot as a jam.
Down, of course, Matt's other big, number, great song. There's things that I love about it. I'll leave most of that to them. But for my parts, I put in a little harmony on the chorus. You know, it's very minor, insignificant, but I loved it because, again, it's a contribution, and you've got this band, and you're all on the same page 99% of the time. It's great, and just to be able to throw in some little tidbit and make your little contribution it's great. It's great fun, and it's like you can get your hands on material from somebody else, even if it's not your own song, and you can put things. It's an awesome feeling. And I put a little high harmony, like a little, you know, step up, not much, but I always enjoy hearing it because it kind of, you know, just brings back the fun of collaborating and all that. And so it's Matt's sort of he has the main melody of the my friend when I was down, and then I kind of come in at the last second. Just sort of that, you know, over the top of it.
I was more pissed about the drum tracks being quiet. I mean, I thought that they needed more snare drum, and y'all kept messing with the fader on the damn BR8 to make it to where the drum tracks wouldn't be very loud. And I thought it needed to have more drive, especially on down, because the drum part is cool, but it's kind of wussy. I wish it was mixed better, but with the equipment and what we had, it's okay. I mean,
Down was another song I wrote on bass. Awesome, fun song to play. Everybody had great parts. Each person had a great part, hard hitting. So it's a real hard hitting, heavy song. Some of the details of the bass are probably kind of blended or buried. So it wasn't a super hard song to play. You know, wrote it to jam and sing lead to, but it's got a few little licks that might be kind of interesting. So,
and then I had the middle solo, dueling solos with Joe. He took the high noodling show off part, and then I took the low riff driven part.
One of the key parts that I really liked, once again, is what Philip played. He played a really cool hook riff over the solo when I was playing. He played in a lower position and I played in a higher position out of a minor pentatonic scale, blues scale.
The opening, I kind of top string open, doubling up the note. Something like that, and then it stepped up to
I was playing in a higher position, so I might have been playing something, you know. You know, just kind of jamming in that area while he was playing the lower part, and it sounded really cool together.
While Joe just wailed away on the, you know, the high notes and the bends and the runs, but it just meshed so well together. He's up high and fast, and I'm low and repetitive, almost like a bass line. But you know, that dueling solo, that's something that I think we're both pretty proud of, all of us, especially me.
you know, the intro is the verse. So the intro and verse part is like. that's the main part. There was a little change and they're not hard, but so then the solo, I built that to go over the chorus chord. So you've got the chorus progression playing for the guitar solos, the dual solos, which were awesome. But anyway, so the change there over the chord pattern progression, I wrote a build up to end the solo where the drums keep go, or the guitar solo to roll into the drum solo on purpose, so it ended like. And then as the drums does the killer, heavy, fast, tearing it up into the solo, you come back in with the chorus. Who do you think you are? You hang around. When I look at you, it's placing the crowd. What makes you think you can hang around? Where were you, my friend, when I was down? That's how it went.
Jason had an awesome drum solo in this song. Matter of fact, I think it kind of rivals any drum solo I've ever heard. It was just that good. But anyway.
Like the drum solo for Down?
Yeah, that was the same thing. It was just like I played the beat that it had all the way through, add a little bit of bass drum to it, and then follow in with a big tom fill going back into it.
So it's cool that Matt put some rhythm guitar down. I played rhythm guitar on the verses and chorus, and Joe put rhythm guitar down too, just to fatten it up. And I was trying to play the rhythm guitar for the intro, and Matt was telling me what he wanted, and I just wasn't getting it. I just wasn't getting it, and so he took it upon himself to lay down the rhythm to that intro, and it sounds great. He took my Les Paul and, mostly just clean, and he maybe even down-tuned it, I don't know, but sounded great. It sounded very, Nirvana-style intro, and at first I didn't like being replaced. It's like, starting pitcher getting pulled by the skipper on the mound and you walk off irritated, shaking your head. But as soon as I heard what he put down, I knew he nailed it. That's what he was that's what he wanted right there.
Jason's drumming, incredible with that little drum solo in the middle. Really made the song stand out. Philip playing, a really cool guitar riff over the solo, like a little hook that he was great at doing. Really made that song.
And then it builds, rings out. Now on that note that rings out, we had a difference of opinion as producers. I was of the opinion that you let notes ring, and maybe if you have to fade them out, you do not chop them off. Well, the drum solo was coming up, Jason's big drum solo, great drum solo, and Matt, and it's his song, so you get the final say, really, if you're the songwriter, even though we're co-producers, and so I'm insisting, and we're kind of butting heads, let it ring, and nope, it's got to be off by whatever marker on the time tracker, because this drum solo is coming up, and I want to clear the decks for this drum solo, which I understand, totally, but at the same time, you do not. And he chopped the note. And Philip, to this day, he says I cut the end of that note, and it was great. You listen to it now, it sounds great, it's perfect, it's what it needed. But one of the reasons I stick with that is, one cool thing is they're both great. Philip's is like a raunchy riff-driven thing, and Joe's is like a skilled, all these techniques and runs, and they both just sound great. They blend great together. But you notice at the end of the solo, they come in and arrive at the same note. Joe stops that note. He played through it and he knew when to stop there, and so the splice or cut had them end on the same note at the same time. Perfect. It's great, and it sounds great.
And just you could cut it on the track, and it's just this cold stop. And to this day, I still can't forgive him for that. I hear it every time I hear Down and listen to that guitar solo, the dueling guitar solo leading into the drum solo, and it is the most obvious thing to me in my mind. I don't know that it's that obvious, but it is to me. And he just chopped the note, and that was the end of it. And I was not happy about that. Still can't let it go. But anyway, great song.
Nicole and Bobby are hanging out, and hey, you want to hang out? Now, she was pregnant with Sydney at the time, a few months pregnant, maybe 4, 5, 6 months. So she's in the story, and that's kind of neat. But the funniest thing about her, me, and Revolver is the band's still going on at this time, and we had cut our second CD, the Imaginary Joe CD. So I'm hanging out with Jason. We were in his white pickup truck. He called it White Lightning, and so the two of them get in the cab with us. So it's Jason's driving his truck, of course. Nicole's next to him. Bobby's next to her. I'm on the outside, but we're all crammed in there. So it was kind of like, all right, we're all cozy. And so we were listening. We're like, hey, listen to our CD. So this is cool. We want to show off our CD to these girls, and knew them from work. And but anyway, I'll never forget, because the main thing, if anything, that I can remember out of that was we'd got to song 4, and that's Down. It's my song. I wrote it. I'm singing. And we all loved it. We thought it was great. And Jason, so we're kind of like, yeah, this is the big one. This is the big hitter. Well, I don't even know if it got halfway through or whatever. So Bobby reaches up. It's next track. Like, and I'll never forget, I look over at Jason, and Jason's got this, half amused, half shocked look, but he's wanting to laugh, but it's like, oh crap, that's you, that's your song, and that's one of our big ones or whatever. She just punched the nail, I'm done. I think she didn't like it, or I don't know. I mean, it was just like, it hurt, and it's just, I was just kind of, I didn't say anything or act like it, but it was like inside I'm kind of mad, kind of hurt, and it's just like, oh man, it was a diss. When you talk about intentional or not, just a huge diss. It was pretty crushing, and to be one of our best songs at that. I mean, that was one of our better, one of my best. I mean, it's not like she just killed the, one of maybe my 5th best one on the album or whatever. That might have been the best, and it was hard rock, and it was great. We all thought that, this is big, and so it was, wow, I'll never forget that. And so ironically though, our youngest daughter together, and I had nothing to do with this, but she absolutely loves that song Down. I mean, it was completely on her own. She had an iPhone that I'd happened to sync our album with, and she just found it herself and was listening to the album. She'd always go to track 4. She's 5 now, and but she constantly, I love this song, Daddy, is this you? And just loves it. So I'm like, the irony there is great.
That rock and roll song really ate its Wheaties for breakfast.
With the second album, Heavier Rock, there was one on there that was co-written by Jason and John Belcher, and John sings lead on most of it. They kind of share lead vocals, but that one's kind of an anomaly on that album. This is a pretty good song, but felt a little out of place. Mostly rock on that album. There was a couple that were out of place, but most of them were pretty good.
Joe really took to that song me and John wrote, Standing Outside in the Cold, Cold Rain, put all those elaborate guitar parts to it.
Joe put down quite a few guitar parts and a lot of tasty guitar licks in that.
So some of the chords in Standing Outside were so different than anything on the album, and the song for that matter. I believe it was Jason and John's song. But one of the things that I really tried to capitalize on was the first two chords going from the A major to A major 7th. That kind of opened up a door to maybe play some jazzier sounding lines, even pretty simple ones like just going and even playing the same chords higher up, but playing it in an arpeggio fashion that I'd never played. And you could kind of find those in different places.
And even on Lost in a Memory, aka Standing Outside in the Cold, Cold Rain, that John Belcher, Jason Riley, country-ish, slow number, country ballad kind of thing. Wasn't really country, but it wasn't rock. It was more country than anything. But anyway, that was John sort of coming in and Joe coming out, two ships passing in the night. But even on that one, Joe played leads, which really, really good leads, beautiful licks on that song.
The song titled Lost in a Memory, Standing Outside is what we called it. Standing Outside in the Cold, Cold Rain. And it went on like that. Kind of a country song. John Belcher and Jason Riley, they co-wrote. I think it was a little more, maybe 60-40 John, and so he sang most of it, but him and Jason both sing it. And Jason would take the high harmony, and then the bridge or chorus, whatever you would call it, goes into a change, and John sings the first one, Jason picks up the second one. Philip and I were kind of coached Jason on his vocal part. He was kind of mimicking John. It was like his turnaround where it's did you think you were doing right when you left me alone that night? Anyway, they end up with what do you have to gain by bringing me this pain, and John, just in his style, just kind of pain, just the way he sings. Well, Jason he was doing the same thing. It was like his turn comes around and he's singing it the same way, and I remember just looking at him like, don't do that. And this was in the back room when we were recording the track, the back room with that practice pad. Yeah, I mean, it sounded okay for John. It wasn't a big deal, but I was just kind of thought, it's kind of a strange little twist, but it's whatever. But it's John doing it. It's like, don't repeat that. Don't mimic it. So I remember coaching him on that. Go do it your way. He's doing it this way. You sing it the way you sing it, and just kind of draw out the word instead of just kind of like almost like a vibrato. And so I remember that's always stood out to me. It was pretty interesting, and I liked how Jason's part turned out. I thought that was good coaching.
Good old Joe, when he was still playing with us, remember Standing Outside in the Cold, Cold Rain, pretty much laid down every guitar track to that song. He did, right?
Who?
Joe did. Every guitar track to that song.
3-part harmony, Philip harmonized with them, and he also put down an acoustic rhythm guitar.
I want to say maybe even bass, but it worked out pretty good.
One of the things I liked about my bass that I put to it, and then I heard Jason say something like he was crediting Joe for it, and I was like, wait a minute, hey, that's mine. But what a compliment, though. He plays a mean bass. I mean, of course, he's a savant on the guitar, and so that's the best compliment I can get, because if he thinks Joe put it down, it had to be good. So Standing Outside was written by John Belcher with help from Jason Riley. Pretty cool chords. good little melody, harmonies, and they both took turns on singing the bridge, and chords went something like this. I had a hook on bass. I did the bass, of course, and kind of had a signature hook in there in A, so kind of in the A chord and coming out of A. And I had another lick, I remember, kind of interesting, goes into the B minor chord for the bridge, I guess it is. It was my first country bass. I didn't do country bass, but I had to for that. And kind of interesting with the hooks, the little runs, things you probably wouldn't do when you're experienced and play. But I think it's good. It's better that way. Sometimes you get older and you're more in the box. When you're young, you're just creative. You know less, so maybe that's better. And you're just trying to fill the gaps between the chords instead of just hanging out in the chord box, I guess, which is probably, to me, is a good thing. So the other run that was interesting, I think, was this, going into B minor. So that's kind of a signature run, I guess. Almost has a little bit of a mirror sound to it.
So, standing outside, the first solo, I believe I played Jason's Fender Bullet on the recording. I played something along the lines of this.
But I liked it because I was not a country bass player by any means, and I, in fact, hated country music at the time. I didn't like the style, didn't play the style, but I kind of took some pride in, I put down a country bass to it, and so I'm really fond of it. It's not just because I did it, it's like, hey, I was a rock and roll bass player. You pat yourself on the back a little bit, but the 1/4 time or whatever it is, and then I which was kind of my signature, I put in a little riff. So there's just kind of a little bass riff or hook that goes throughout. But I would be doing the country time and then, kind of in the progression with a little hook. And then one thing I liked is I had a same or a similar hook that I descended down into the bridge. And so I'm fond of that. If you listen to it, if you're listening to the track and just following the bass is kind of fun to listen to. And I like that part about writing, writing your own stuff. I was and am far better at writing stuff than just copying along what somebody else has done for a cover. And I always thought of it that way. I wanted to put things down in a way that would be interesting to go back and listen to, if you were one of the rare people that would actually listen for the bass line and what it was doing.
You know what? I did like Standing Outside. Standing Outside was a good one.
The outro solo on Standing Outside, I was trying to come up with some double stop licks based out of the major pentatonic position. And I think I played something along the lines of this. One of Philip's songs on Imaginary Joe that I really liked the simplicity of was called Days in December. And Philip would just start the song with just one simple chord. And I think Jason would come in maybe on the hi-hat with him, but it went something like this. I always thought that was really clever.
Don't push me away just because it's your rainy Saturday.
Days in December, the 6th track off of there, sort of the same deal. All this is just a little ditty, you know, like and he explodes on the drums. He just explodes, and suddenly this little acoustic ditty with these nice little things, little slide parts and little cool. It becomes this drum song that has this exploding. I mean, he just goes off on the drums, and it just makes the song, and it's incredible. So it's just a great band to have such teamwork and creative collaboration. It was just such a fun time. Such a great little group.
One of my favorite drum tracks is Days in December.
Oh yeah.
And it's amazing to me how it's a mellow song with a lot of acoustic and just mellow. And for some reason, you as the drummer decided to go off on the drums.
Yeah, I just I felt like it needed a little bit of flavor on the drums. So, and I liked playing a lot of fills, and I liked doing a lot of tom fills, and just got that new Mapex kit, so I wanted to just go all the way around on it. And it turned out sounding pretty good, and it was really quick, and I don't think I could play it today. I mean, I'd probably play it differently, but yeah, it was that was a fun song to play. That was probably one of my favorites.
Days in December, track 6, Imaginary Joe. A lot of fun to write the bass part too, a lot of fun to play. Drums were great. Jason did monster drumming, a lot of pounding, rolling hits and fills, and a lot of starts and stops. That's a tough song to play. Really tricky, complex. It was acoustic guitar rhythm, capoed, really melodic song, very chordy song, and kind of had one foot in 38th Street. It was really almost reminiscent of that, but also the new album hard hitting and really tough to play. We didn't do 3-chord songs, straight beat, easy stuff. All our stuff was chordy, complex, breaks and stops, and pretty interesting song. Track number 6, Days in December. That had a verse, chorus, musical bridge, and then the 4th part, which was the ending, which was slightly different. Now the chorus and the verse chords weren't too terribly different, but just enough to kind of alter the melody slightly and change it. And then at the end, sort of the tag ending is a 4th part. Back when I used to write 3, 4, 5, and more parts to a song. And incredible drumming by Jason. I mean, it's one of my favorite. It went like... And as I would come in for keeps, rather than just the stop, he'd be on the hi-hat and count his way in and then come in rolling. And originally, there weren't any stops like that. There were stops, but there wasn't fermatas, for lack of a better term, the correct term. But there weren't, long beats between stops. It was more like, and the demo survived. We'll probably have it playing right underneath. It was just sort of really brief stop, and then somehow with the BR8 it got turned into just in the course of engineering it, it was like, oh, we got to count the beats, and that somehow created more space. I don't know. But later, I wasn't all that happy. I was like, I wasn't sure we made the right decision with the gaps like they were. But another thing is that, and it's easy to laugh at this now or scoff or whatever, especially hipster types, people that think they're too cool. I had Matchbox 20 in mind. I was trying to write kind of a radio song, and that's why it comes out. It's kind of catchy, kind of pop catchiness to it, a little fluffy. I mean, not for everybody, and I've talked about how later I finally started trying to write some B-sides, and just write a jam that sounds good but doesn't have to be hit material or whatever. But this was in my stage of like, just about everything I sat down to write, I was trying to write a hit, with the exception of some of my early songs, like Something's Wrong. That was just sort of a jam just because, but the majority, it was like you're trying to write a hit, and this was one of them, and I had Matchbox 20 in mind, and you might hear that, and you might not, but again, it's just because you're thinking of somebody, a band or an artist, or even a particular song, it doesn't mean it's going to come out sounding just like that, but there's flavors to it that you can pick up. So
We are always friends. Now that I know you, know a better friend. Hey, 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 I remember December days. Sun came down, you were walking my way. I'm afraid you got me running away. Everything I feel is a little too real. I remember December days. The sun came down, you were walking my way. I'm afraid you got me running away. The way I feel is a little too real. Don't push me away like a thing you've been pushing me away. Don't push me away. Don't you know you've been pushing me away? Don't push me away, just like you've been pushing me away.
the verses were like, so then it would go to a little musical bridge. I was pretty proud of that muted rhythm. Thought it sounded really cool. Probably picked that up from Third Eye Blind or somebody like that. And then the chorus was very similar to the verses, like I said, but it was only, I think, 3 chords back to that D. So the chorus was, instead of going to C and E minor, you would just go to A minor and then back to D to resolve it. So it would be, and then back to a verse, back to the, and this was a nifty, I don't know where I came up with it, just goofing around, and I really like the sound of that, starting with that pinky note on the D with the capo on the 1st fret. And then going down into those familiar chords and then coming right back up. So I like that. And it's not my favorite song, and it's not the greatest song, but there's those key parts in there that I really like. So, you know, you gotta find something you like, even in the stuff that's not your favorite. And then, so anyway, the verse would have gone something like, "Don't push me away, just because it's your rainy sad day. Hey, 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 hey." Then you'd go into the, and it would go on like that. Then you'd get to the end, and that little tag ending would then go back to the "Don't Push Me Away," but with slightly different chords. Don't push me away, like I know you've been pushing me away. Don't push me away, like I think you've been pushing me away. And then the slide parts, of course, kind of over that tag ending. I couldn't begin to try to play those. I don't know how I did it. I didn't know how to play slide guitar. I still don't know how to play slide guitar. Like the thing you've been pushing me away. Don't push me away. Don't you know you've been pushing? Joe had just started, but was really good, like everything else, guitar-wise. I mean, he could pick up the bass and play really good bass. So he was just like that. He could pick up the slide, and he put a slide part to, obviously, those bridges, those musical bridges, and it sounded pretty good. One of them was a little rough, but one of them was really good. We loved it. And then we did most of that song, but by the end of that song, he was already starting to, I mean, he either quit or he was fading away and about to quit. But I remember, whatever the case was, he wasn't there, and it wasn't going to happen. It was like I wanted more slide to end the song, but it wasn't going to happen, and I realized that, so I picked up the slide. I don't know if it was his, mine, whose. I think I had a slide. I think I had a metal slide, even though I didn't play, still don't. And so I just picked it up and I just fooled around for, I don't know, a little while, and then I just put something down that works, and one-time deal.
Days in December, same thing. Some of the stuff that Jason did, Phil's, and then some of the hooks that Philip came up with in the song, just really, really made them what they were.
I mean, went da 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 da. 1, 2, da 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 da. And it was just like, oh man, I just knew when to come in with the fills. It wasn't like overflowed with fills. They came in at the right spots, which is what I like. I mean, I enjoyed it.
It was tasty.
It was tasty. It was fun.
And so, whose idea was it to pan left to right?
I think it was mine. I think it was a combination of mine and yours, because we were getting into Pink. You were getting into Pink Floyd, and we were listening to all these 70s stuff where they would pan. And I said, wouldn't that be cool if when I did a drum deal, it went across the.
And we discovered that on the BRA.
Yeah, we discovered it, and we're like, let's do that. It was cool. It's kind of crazy how that works, though, when you really think about it.
Yeah, and so what we wound up doing in production is going, okay, we're going to start all the way to the left, and when you went into a roll, it panned all the way right, so it made it run across. We thought that was the coolest thing.
There was a song that we were listening to, and we heard that.
Days in December was another one like that. I remember that. Good heavy drum hits, another one technically hard, a lot of starts and stops, and but Jason's drumming is really cool to listen to, similar to Masquerade. I mean, it's just a really fat drum track, really good beefy fills, and I've got a pretty good some bass runs on that. So bass and drums for Days in December, I think that's really, really good. And Joe put slide on that, great slide guitar. That's a good one. I like that one. I think it's kind of an underrated one for the track or the album. It was real melodic, but it had a heavy side to it because of the drums and the good heavy drums and bass. So it's a fun song.
Another favorite of mine was Summer's Gone. Actually, it's Make Believe Summer's Gone. Parentheses in there somewhere. Summer's Gone in parentheses. Never quite understood why people did titles with parentheses. I mean, just go with whatever. Pick one. But sus chords, great lyrics, melody. Just a great little song.
One of Matt's songs on Imaginary Joe that I really liked was called Summer's Gone. The chord progression, I've always really admired it. It's using suspended chords, and up until that time we hadn't done a whole lot of that.
I wrote some Make Believe Summer's Gone on guitar, so I wrote it on guitar chords. A lot of times I'd write the song on bass and either kind of translate it to guitar or let Joe do that. And but this one I wrote on guitar, and I used suspended chords. That was kind of our thing, flavor of Revolver at the moment. You know, Born That Way had those suspended chords. It was like suspended there, and then we call them sus chords, probably because it was SUS written in the music book. I remember writing it primarily on an acoustic guitar, probably Phillips Fender, but really kind of what I remember most is in between takes at the practice pad. We'd get about 3 songs off and Jason would stop, but that's about the most we could get consecutively. He'd run to his truck and drive around and come back, or there was always people there, so he was always wanting to, to talk and goof off. So anyway, in between takes was a lot of kind of how I taught myself how to play guitar. There was a lot of downtime those days or nights. And so anyway, I remember writing that. I would play, to begin with, I would play the chords on guitar, and Joe would play bass and Philip would play leads to it.
Summer's Gone. And then
progression went like this.
Summer's Gone is a sad, somber kind of tune about, obviously, summer's gone, about the end of a season, the end of an era, that kind of thing. And very ironic, because by the time we got to working on that in the band house on the BR8, Joe had left, and I had to play all the guitar parts on that song. And I was kind of nervous about Matt wanted a fingerstyle intro, and that was not really my forte. And we needed Joe. I felt we needed Joe for that, but I had to do it, and it came out all right. I used the slapback effect on there, and I had to come up with the, something like that. And great chords, good melody, great lyrics. But the chord structure, it's just, Joe and I both have used this for years in examples in teaching lessons, or, just talking about suspended chords. He's got that suspended open chord E, but you got 1, 2, 3 suspended chords before you go to that E major open chord. And of course the verses that I just demonstrated, same type of deal, suspended, open, E. So those were the parts of the song, but there was a third part which had a subtle difference, same chord pattern but a different rhythm, and it's over the chorus, it's more of a
I think Make Believe, Summer's Gone, that would have been, it was really kind of towards the end of the Revolver era and the band house and everything. It was kind of one of the last songs to be written for me in that period. And, it was about a girl that I would wind up writing quite a few songs about. Like I joke, my musical Roswell, sort of from that first interaction on, it really gave my songwriting a whole new perspective and take. And pretty good lyrically, pretty interesting, I think, for a kid anyway. But we had a lot of good lyrics and good chords, and pretty talented for kids.
That sort of thing. And then, well, for those bridges, if you will, with the more driving rhythm, I came up with a repetitive lick, a signature, that appears throughout the song, and it goes like this. And that goes over that part I just played, those chords. I liked it, it was cool, but I think we overdid it, because it appears on every one of those except one. When Matt, as the executive producer, he pulled back and said, no, I want just the right after the no, he yells that out, vocal line, and then it comes like, and he was right. I argued at the time, though, because I wanted my signature lick over everything. Now looking back, not only was he right, we should have had two of those that didn't have that lick, but instead it was just the first one right after the no, and then the lick comes back. So it's in there an odd number of times, and it should have been cut back twice. So it's probably in there about 5 times instead of it should have been 4. But one thing I liked about the lick was I tried to think a little differently and try to reverse your thought process and kind of do the opposite, or make it backwards. Reverse the polarity, Robin. And, you know, so like instead of starting in a sequential kind of, you know, like a, or like a, or, you know, basic kind of thing, I go, okay, wait, I want to start low, but I want to do some pull-offs, and, you know, I double them up or so, you know, kind of bunch them up instead of, you know, just a, you know, that's your, I recently discovered pull-offs, and, you know, instead of just a single and that kind of thing, you know, you learn the hammer on to the notes. You hammer on here, so you get your hammers and pull-offs, and hammer on this, or you could, or, so anyway, it's like, oh, pull-offs, and so I wanted to go, and then, ooh, up, and then back, so normally my thought process wouldn't be to go up like that. That's sort of jumping outside the box a little bit, because I would have wanted sequentially to go descending notes in a sequential manner. But instead I kind of, and instead of going, you know, like, oh, I'll jump up here and then back, and, you know, I mean, that's not the greatest display of guitar work ever, but, you know, it's still kind of nifty and still kind of neat. So especially with that slapback effect and putting context of the song and the lyrics and all that stuff, which great lyrics. And so then one of my other licks was it was like around here. And, oh wow, that sounds pretty basic, doesn't it? It's simple. But where it came from was I was playing my Les Paul and those humbucker pickups and having it kind of set, the level set a certain way. And with those effects, it had a ringing sound. And I came up with that live. We would play that live at the band house. It was a live number, not just a CD creation, a BR8 creation. It was a live deal. And so Joe, when Joe was still around, he would play the chords because he knew those, and I would just fiddle around the whole song as Matt's playing bass and singing. I'd fiddle around with these licks of like, and that's what I was doing. So I'm playing with my Les Paul, and it had a ringing, almost harmonic kind of, it was just a cool sound. I liked playing with it. So that found its way in there on the record.
Well, the riffs that I really loved in Summer's Gone that Philip played, there's a couple hooks throughout the song. Probably one of my favorites favorite solos that he ever has played, in my opinion. It's definitely my favorite. But here's one of the hooks. And then the solo, he's got one that's really my all-time favorite lick. I wish I could have come up with it. But it was something like... I always loved that.
I remember I had this amp, it was a crate amp, and it had some effects built into it. And I liked the slapback. I sort of discovered the slapback, and it's like, I think it was if you took reverb all the way over, or or it was echo. You could do a delay. It was a delay effect, but if you cranked it all the opposite way, it was a slapback. And what that means to the uninitiated is, rather than an echo, a da 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 da, it was almost a pre-echo, where it's sort of hard to explain, but it's like a backwards echo and a slapback effect. And so I did that for that. Sadly, Joe had exited stage left at that point, and so I had to play all the guitar work, leads, rhythm, and everything. And I was pretty nervous about the intro. It called for a fingerstyle intro, and that was not my specialty, and speciality, as Joe and I would joke. But it was not my forte, and I had to give it a go.
Summer's Gone was a cool one. I actually wrote it on guitar, so I wrote the chord progressions on guitar and everything, and some of the early live takes we have, Joe's playing bass. That sounds great. He's playing some funky, just kind of strange, funky bass part too. Sounds fantastic. I love it. Mine's more of a driving, on the finished recording, it's just a driving bass, but the chord progression's cool, I think, the suspended chord deal, that pattern, but it's a good enough progression. I think that whatever you play bass-wise sounds good, but it was like... So that was the driving part. There was a couple different parts. It was a little bit tricky, I guess, for kids when you're 19 or whatever. It had at least 3 different time signatures, so it gave us a little bit of trouble recording. We nailed it in the end, of course, but it was, so there was a couple sections. That was sort of the solo, intro part, and sort of the interludes, and the verse would be a stop and a stop part, and it would kick back in. But anyway, and the chorus was a little bit different beat, so it went something like... something like that.
And then, so then the lead solo, which I was proud of for a number of years, because it was like, okay, we're getting to the end of the song, and Matt does his lyrical turnabout, because he asks the question at the beginning of the song, is it over? Is summer gone? Is it time to move along? I make believe you'll never leave. I wake up and you're gone. But is it over? And then he works his way through the song where he determines, now it's over, summer's gone, it's time to move along, and he makes it definitive. And but he also does a kind of a turnabout at the end, which is one of those sort of realizations that you come to, and then you flip the script, and it's great. I always love that kind of thing in a song. And sometimes it's done in a little cheesier manner or a more obvious manner, but even those I like. But this is done in a more subtle manner, but it's still a definitive step.
So it's around that time, kind of figuring out a little bit of guitar, and so I wanted to play, how it is. It's like a new toy, and so I kind of wanted to play a little bit of guitar. I didn't want to switch positions or anything, but it's like, yeah, I want to play guitar on a song or two.
I'll be check the air. I think the weather's changed. Now it's over, summer's gone, it's time to move along. Now it's over, summer's gone, it's time to move along. Make believe you'll never leave me, awake if they're gone. Make believe you'll never leave me, awake if they're gone. Now it's over, summer's gone, it's time to move along.
Dancing with your pretty boys while I sit alone and sing. Close your eyes and it'll drift away. I'll exit from this twisted play. Step outside to check the air. I think the weather's changed. I love it. It's great. It's like I'm out of here. And, you know, and it's not done in some obvious easy way. I mean, it's artfully done. And anyway, so that's the song. The lyrics are over, and it's time to drive this baby home. And so I got to play a solo, and we don't have Joe. He's our ace, and our ace is gone, and so I got to come up with something. And then so I just came up with the. Back to the and some overlays mixing some of those lyrics in. But it was a great song. It was a lot of fun recording it, and it was a challenge because I was the only guitar player left, and I had to do all of that work and try to replace Joe on that. And I was fairly proud of what I did and you know what Matt did. Those chords, that structure, those lyrics, and it was just a great song. And we actually wound up doing it years later in the very beginning of Brother Sharp around 2005, and this was done around 2000, late 2000, early 2001. So, you know, roughly 5 years later, we did it on stage with Brother Sharp and at Lucky's, and we might have tried it another time or two over the years, not sure. But, you know, great song, but it's sort of in the shadows of those other two giants on the album of his.
So he was kind of fading away at that point and really just kind of, really basically just left. And so we kind of finished up that album without him. There were some key songs that, you know, Make Believe Summer's Gone and Masquerade. That was a fun, interesting song. Philip did the lead work on that. So some songs like that were just, he was already kind of gone by then.
Summer's gone,